Greetings once more, everyone. Welcome to the Dracovin Empire. Welcome to the world of darkness. Yes, we're diving back in to that corrupted shadow of our world. This time, with another tradition from Mage The Ascension. Yes, join my hand, Dracovin, your host here, as we dive in. We go through the shadows into some place that looks a lot similar to our world, but just something's a little wrong, something's a little different. Something's a little off. Maybe it's just a little magic. Yes, we're heading into Mage The Ascension to talk about the Vervbena. Vervbena. According to pronunciation, I've got Vervbena. But yes, we'll be diving into it and talking a lot about it, learning all about this member of the Council of Nine Mystic Traditions. But where do we start with this? Well, as usual, I shout out some books. Any of the core books. I'm showing off the M21 here. But then the two tradition books, the tradition book, Vervbena, and Vervbena tradition book, they're just from different editions, and they switch them. So these are great sources. These are kind of where I'm going from for this. So here's where I can shout. All right, let's talk about them. Their tradition. They preserve ancient crafts and wisdom that's been handed down in ages. Warlocks, witches, druids, druidesses, shamans, mystics, priestesses, everything connected usually to what is referred to the old gods. Modern version of Vervbena does have some similarities to Wiccans, but they are still different. So if you know our world's version of what Wiccan culture actually is, it's very similar in a lot of ways, but they're basically inheritors of older legacies from disparate cultures originating around the world. Regardless, they have of these different faiths and customs, they have some common principles that they share, which allows them to unify together. A deep respect for Earth and the natural order, a holistic view of people and the world, that it's intrinsically intertwined, and a belief that the power and understanding can be found in embracing life in all its passions and pains. Of every tradition that we've talked about and that we're going to talk about, Vervbena, unfortunately, are the most challenged by the advances in the world we have now. Modern technology, advanced technology, and expanding civilization. And each individual member has to fight to find a way that they apply the lessons and practices of the old ways they've been taught to this modern world. And they also understand that if not, they can't find that adaptation, both as mages and on the mortal side of things, they're basically fringe practitioners of some kind of dying breed of crap. So, yeah, they just are fighting the good fight against them. So let's talk about their Hardigan. I never said that word correct. So, Vervbena believe that their magic is innate, unlike a lot of other mages, and that it flows through everything in creation. The real power of the phases of the moons, position of the stars, combinations of plants properly prepared, the blood and seed of every living creature, quintessence is the pulse of the universe, carrying energy and potential for change, giving life to the world. Magic is that energy, that life. And whether one is awakened or not, they have it pumping in their veins. Vervbena count quite a number of hedge magicians among their ranks, and draw little distinctions between them and true mages. If you are, side note here for hedge mages, they're basically sorcerers. They use something a little bit different. It's a form of magic used by mortal non-mages. So it's a mortal finds a way to deal with magic. They aren't an awakened being. They don't have it this similar to any of the other mages we've talked about. They're a sorcerer. It's something different. So in Vervbena, they've got something. And basically, to be awakened is merely an intuitively sense of magic all around them, and to shape it directly with their own life energy, as the Vervena's ancestors used. So that's what they believe. It's sort of like, you just have a better sense of it, you're shaping it with your own life energy. It doesn't mean you couldn't be part of us, you can shape it with the external power sources. So, when it comes to foci, it's a lot of symbolic and mystical properties of them. Knives, daggers, broomsticks, wands, staves, cauldrons, mirrors, jewelry. Some of them have a book of shadows containing secrets. Herbs and potions are popular. It's a lot of things that you would say to a lot of those folk craft studies. Again, there is that similarity to Wicca that we know about, the Wiccan book, and things like druids and stuff like that. So yes, also music, song, and dance are important to raise passions in their lives. Let's talk about the history. because we have to talk about it. And this is a symbol from them from the Old Faith symbol. Vervbena speak of the Wick as the first mages, beings of mortal flesh and primal spirit who could bend the world to their will. Magic was everywhere. The Wick wielded it with power and finesse unrivaled by any that follows. They were leaders, protectors, pioneers of the early human communities. They traveled the earth and other worlds, lived amongst the animals, the terrible monsters, brought back to the people knowledge of healing, divination, and craft. After giving birth to children of their own and passing on their gifts, the Wick eventually departed from the world. Though to where and for what reason, no one is sure. So that's their earliest kind of version of a beings. And we turn to actual ancient history and the Aduna. They were heirs to them, literally and figuratively, and wielded some of their skills in awakened magic. Where Wick had been outsiders and travelers, Aduna were born and lived with humans as healers, scribes, priestesses, philosophers, scholars. They grew up to power and prominence across the Mediterranean, spread over time throughout Europe and parts of Asia. Many figures of myth are claimed to have been Aduna, such as Circe, Lilith, Nita, Merlin, Morgan Le Fay, perhaps even some ancient gods. So there's a lot of connection to history in the Vervenas idea. The Vervena believed that several groups of mages can trace their origins to offshoots of the Aduna. The first and largest branch were the Dream Speakers, who valued the spiritual over the living world, and could largely dominate the Americas and Africa for millennia. The second branch was the cult of Dionysus, which consists of individuals who basked in the joys of drinking, partying, and sex, and eventually merged with others to create the cult of ecstasy. Finally, the Chalcidian circle formed around 400 BCE in Greece from the efforts of Hippocampus to organize the Adunian knowledge. Many of his students were ambitious and held little respect for the natural world. They performed dark and gruesome experiments and were condemned by the Aduna. The rise of the Romans brought the first adversaries for the Aduna, the cult of Mercury, a methodical and expansive society of mages that would later evolve into the Order of Hermes. The cult of Mercury began undermining the Aduna's influence in Greece and Italy, and effectively aided the Rome in conquering the Britannia and lands held by the Gauls, where the old ways had been long honored. The people called out to the Aduna to help against the Romans, and the two groups of mages began a war with each other. This conflict continued for centuries, only intensified as Rome's converted to Christianity, and the Masonic voices rose to power. Alright. Duff time, we reach the Dark Ages. Now this is the Renaissance symbol there. I don't know. You can probably use Old Faith in the Dark Ages. We're in the Dark Ages. This is kind of where we get something called the Old Faith Fellowship. Again, this is the Renaissance. So Rome's decline, the descendants of the Wick continue to be locked in a three-way war with the Order of Hermes and Masonic voices. Yet over time, the Order of Reason, an alliance formed from the union of the Lycosian Circle and some other scientific tradition of will workers, became a greater threat. Using knights and Inquisition of the Church as their weapons, the Order of Reason aimed to eliminate the old ways, along with other forms of magic it did not approve and control. The Old Faith Fellowship was the first attempt to unify pagan mages and disparate cultures and beliefs against a common enemy. But it couldn't hold back the Inquisition. Inquisitors put witches to the torch, ruthlessly eliminate evidence of the Old Faith wherever they could. The majority of those who tried and killed by Inquisitors were not members of the Old Faith, nor even true mages. Their numbers were already few and continued to dwindle as the results of the purge. Now reached the Renaissance, and in the mid-15th centuries, adherents to the old ways banded together and joined the Council of Nine, claiming the seat of life as Vervbena. So, they'd attempted to unify, fought against this. This is when they finally could unify. The Inquisition still continued, though, and the Vervbena was forced to hide their practices, their arts in secret, passing the wisdom of secret to new generations from mentor to apprentice through a book of shadows. I mentioned the Book of Shadows. Now, when we reach the Victorian Age, which is the symbol for, it's still a lot more of decline. It's this, we're continuing to see overall membership wane, either through oppressions. We're not getting the Inquisition quite the same, but certainly speaking, the old ways continue to fall out of popularity, belief, understanding. It's kind of the Order of Reason and the Inquisition connect to it have done their job in a lot of things, but Vervbena tries their best to hold on. That is until we get to more modern times, the 20th century. That's when things change for them. Yeah, 20th century saved the Vervbena. Basically, their beliefs, other than passing from mentor apprentice to the people that, they could apprenticeship in, had kind of fallen out of the minds of sleepers. We get to the 1960s. An interest in occult and holistic lifestyle that shared a lot of connections with the Vervbena popped back into popularity. And since then, since the decades since the tradition saw this has been the first time the Vervbena have grown in number rather than shrunk in centuries. And especially with their attempting to adapt to this more modern world, which is very different and difficult for them, lots of factions within them have been bringing greater emphasis on exploring new ideas and basically incorporating more culture into them, and different cultures, and kind of expanding their beliefs, finding the similarities in cultures that have their connections to them. They were disparate cultures to begin with. Why not explore more? So, how are they organized? Not very. I think that's the easiest way to say it. The Vervbena are very loosely organized. They have no official ranks, no leaderships. There are individuals that are sometimes given the title of novice, initiate, elder, the latter being a sign of great respect, if not direct authority. A cabal of Vervbena is called a circle, and usually formed around the goal or cultural identity shared by the members. Circles rarely exceed 13 members, and are often quite smaller. Each circle may have their own rules or customs, as well as their own shared book of shadows. The only common role shared among circles is that of a high priest or priestess, the co-leaders of the group, particularly in regard to matters of ritual. A priest and a priestess. Grand circles are sometimes formed, if briefly, as Vervbena gather to share news and ideas, celebrate the changing seasons, or discuss problems that are far too large for us to move them all. So there is sometimes that they have much greater coming together, but it's very specific reasons. Otherwise, they're very much so these small circles on their own, doing their own things. Now, there are a number of factions we can talk about. Now, again, I will tell you these factions, and these factions are not as cut and dry. There are 4 factions of Vervbena that arose around the 4 Avatar Essence types. But membership in these factions is not limited by a mage's Avatar Essence. So it's around the Essence types that these factions, the major ones, have been formed, but you don't have to be of that essence to be there. It's just that it's a bit of concept. The Gardeners of the Tree, which pattern avatars, are the traditionalist core of Vervbena. They're keepers of the old ways and history of the Vervbena. They believe they are descendants of the Wick and Aduna, and they pass down knowledge and magic through family lines. They protect and preserve the ancient practices of Vervbena during the Inquisition and the processes and the progress of the Order of Regions. They begin to calcify and work to keep the different internal factions distinct and not mix them, though after World War II and fighting against Vervbena extremists who side with the Nazis has softened their traditionalism. Yeah, again, you get extremists who side with various things. There were some. They're basically, maybe we should soften a little bit. And understanding that Vervbena will need new ways and new blood to remain healthy. They understand that. So it's sort of like they have moved beyond their very strict traditionalist view to a degree. Soften a little bit. Interestingly enough, newly joined cultures from Native American, African, and Asian countries who don't want to meld in to the generic Vervbena traditions join the Gardeners to preserve their specific cultural ways. So basically, there are some cultures that have joined the Vervbena, some smaller mage groups, and they don't want to, blend in with the rest of Vervbena, so they go join the Gardeners. They can kind of keep to themselves, but still be Vervbena. The Life Weavers, with the dynamic avatar as their symbol, they've found the Call of the Wild profound. Those that wish to slip into dark woods, explore its pathways, understand that life is neither good or evil, it just is, it just was, and given the choice between predator and prey, they know which side they choose. They've been hermits, wanderers, forest strange folk living there since the Vervbena formed. The Order of Reason drove them to join the tradition. In reality, they were created as a faction by the other ones, a way to level Vervbena who did not fit in with any other. But that suits them fine, since they've adopted the faction name as their own, though they're kind of scattered as they ever were. They abandon pretensions of tradition and seek to truly live and exist in the moment, to recognize the limitations to put past them, to understand themselves and reinvent how they are. They're often, if not always, solitary. Some young life weavers will group up in pairs or small circles, spending their lives together. Others will temporarily join cross-tradition cabals before moving on. Not all live in the wilderness either. some moving through the wilderness of civilization, changing their physical age, sex, or race to experience new states of being, just as others shift into various animals to experience nature through many different perspectives. So, yeah. They seek perceptions. The Moonseekers, the questing avatars connected faction, they look beyond their own ways and bounds and search for connections to others. The Gardeners preserve the old ways during the burning times, but the Moonseekers are the ones that found enough common cause and similarities to actually bring the Vervbena together. They seek out new ways to view and experience life, new ways to work magic. It was by their efforts and insights that they were able to connect and spread into the Americas, Africa, and Asia. All those who follow ancestral ways, worship the old gods, feel the pulse of life, dance to the rhythms of nature, are fellow brothers and sisters. They experienced expulsion in membership after the occult, an explosion in membership after the occult revivals in the late 19th and 20th century. Summer of Love, Bride of Paganism, Witchcraft of the 21st century. More traditional members call themselves Crystal Weavers, New Agers, or Social Media Witches, but the Moonseekers are simply new leaves in a very old tree. They intend to pull the Vervbena to the new century, whether they want it or not. Some internal groups are the Fairy Folk, LGBTQ members who explore notions of identity, love, and community. The Techno-Pagans, who see no conflict between technology, paganism, and magic, and actively incorporate it. They get along well with Dreamspeak Techno-Shamans, the Society Ether of Virtual Depths, who often form charities with, and the New Age, who seek to grab hold of the unique moment in time. These are subgroups within the faction. As more people in Western society are leaving organized religion and returning to more ancient or mystical ways, such as paganism and witchcraft, they find more people connecting with them. They insert themselves in these groups, promoting the shift in culture and putting out content to help those seeking new paths, to bring about a new spring for the Vervbena. And finally, there's the Twisters of Fate, the primordial avatars, who are members who experience visions and dreams of past lives from when they were healers, wise folk, shamans, and humanity. They saw how rituals had grown increasingly complex under the rules of the Gardeners and broke off to form their own faction, seeking to recapture the primal essence that formed the basis of the tradition. They're a smaller faction, often isolationist, spending time with themselves or working to find ways to recapture and understand the old ways. They will occasionally pass on the insights to other Vervbena who come across or seek them out. Each member strives to live simply and use their power of knowledge for good. Though there's no consensus on what good really is, but that's the Vervbena. It's simply put, they are people that, yes, if you think Wiccans, Druids, Shamans, they kind of scream a lot of what Vervbena is, but it's not quite the same thing. As we've talked about today, they are a bunch of cultures that have this connection with Earth, holistic views, power, belief in old gods, that have formed in this general consensus to a degree. And granted, there are plenty of little bits and pieces there that each individual or each small group might have their own version of this belief. They are very disparate in their ways. But it's been together that they've survived, and they've been able to survive into this resurgence that they're finding now. They pushed through dark times for themselves where these old ways of tradition and old beliefs and old magics were dying. And becoming accepting and connecting has helped them. It's why they have hedge mages in their group. Sorcerers who would probably be laughed out of or mocked by other members of the Council of Nine Mystic Traditions or other traditions. They are accepting, opening, and gathering in a lot of ways. And they find that putting stuff out together, improving themselves, is important to this work. And yes, there are groups among them that are very traditionalists. I talked about that. But this growing group of them that are understanding that there is a place for them in the new world, and finding that is important. That's what modern Vervbena is. Vervbena is this juxtaposition of understanding the old while trying to adapt the new and finding a way to balance the two. Old and new. That's Vervbena. That's why they're interesting and fun groups, and I hope you enjoyed joining me. I hope you... If you missed, we're a little different here. We have a little hiccup here because there was a hiccup. Two sets. But I hope you enjoyed joining me today. The hiccup was... It did some weird shit. It did some weird shit. But we're okay now. Woo! Back in it. Yeah, I enjoy talking about mage traditions because they are very disparate, very different. Even the Council of Nine traditions. And there are more traditions than just the Council of Nine. The Council of Nine is the major one to talk about as it comes to modern magic as it's known. And yeah, there are a couple more traditions and sub-traditions that are out there that we will have to talk about at some point in time. And we will get to them. But the Council of Nine is the strength of mages as it is right now. Eventually I'll finish and we'll figure out what. And I hope you enjoyed joining me today. If you want to check out my schedule for anything else, there's certainly over on Discord, over on my Twitter/X, and over on my YouTube. I put out my schedule. It's generally the same. It's generally correct. If there's any kind of delays, I talk about it in there. The big things I can shout out are, of course, Wednesdays at 8, Crimson Queen, my live play Pathfinder 1st Edition, and discussing tabletop on Saturdays at 6. I would recommend joining them. Whether you're over on joining me on Twitch as I'm recording this live, or over on YouTube later on, hey, give support. Twitch, always good for a follow. YouTube, like, subscribe, ring the bell, all that people. My question for the day, before we finish up, of course, is an important one. Have you played a Vervbena? Or have you had adventures with a Vervbena? What's your thoughts on them? Let me know in the comments or wherever, in between videos. You can throw it up over here on the side. Let me know what you think. Anyway, remember to check out my social media, Discord, Twitter/X. That's a great place to see schedule updates and changes, too. And I think that's all the stuff to shout out, so I'm going to say for now, farewell. Thank you. Thank you for joining me on this interesting dive into a group which is very fun to learn about and see. Hope you will join me in the future for more Mage The Ascension, other World of Darkness, or any other tabletop. And until that next time, I bid you adieu and wonderful farewell.